Welcome back. And when you see me like this, don't just think politics and current affairs. Think books. Call me Mr. Books. This is the Joy Book Club. Hopefully we bring you joy when we review our books. And as promised the last time, today we are reviewing The 100 Wells of Salaga by Ayesha Harruna Attah. Prize-winning book and many things to say about it. This is the Joy Book Club. We bring books to life. And joining me today for this review, I have, are you ready? Bum, 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 bum. Abena and Komi. But I'll let you, Abena Kakari and Komi Nuvlo, I'll let them tell us who they are and what they do. I'll start with you, Abena.
Okay, so I'm Abena Kwatima Kakari. I'm a bookworm. My Instagram even says it all. I'm a bookworm in GH.
Oh, is that?
Yes.
You've hoarded that for yourself?
Yes, I've taken it.
I see.
So I've loved books from an early age. And so I guess that's what's led into me going into academia. I'm an academic. My background is in African studies and medical anthropology. And yeah, so I just love books and I love reading, love promoting African literature in particular. So I'm very happy to be here.
Well, we're also happy to have you. How about you, Komi?
Yeah, my name is Komi Nuvlo, and I am an educator.
Okay.
I love books too, especially African literature. I'm happy to be here, part of this discussion.
All right. Someone who delves into African studies and writing in respect of that, and an educator. It's going to be pretty, it's going to be high up there.
Yes.
All right. So in case you have a copy of this book, how about you grab a copy and just refresh your memory, jog your memory. But as always, I'm going to give you my literary fun fact, and it's a very simple one, scientific for today. And here it is. Reading for just 6 minutes a day, 6 minutes a day, can reduce stress by 68%. Wow. Bibliotherapy, that's what it's called. Bibliotherapy is the use of reading matter for therapeutic purposes. So, are you stressed? Pick a book. Yeah. That's my literary fun fact for you today. Now I'll come to my guests as we look at this book in terms of the story, the blurb, and then the author. I'll start with you, Rami. Tell us a bit about the book. What does it say?
Well, so Amina lives, Dr. Amina and then Wechi, they are the main people in the book. Amina lives an idyllic life in a village of Botu, until she is brutally separated from her home and forced on a journey that will turn her from a daydreamer into a resilient woman. Wechi, the willful daughter of a chief, is desperate to play an important role in her father's court at Salaga Kwembe. The lives of these two remarkable women converge in a tumultuous meeting that takes them from mistress and slave to unlikely allies, as Amina and Wechi find themselves tangled in a web of desire, jealousy, political intrigue, and illicit affairs. Meanwhile, infighting among Wechi's people threaten to leave the region exposed to powers much larger than themselves. The 100 Wells of Salaga explores the depth of female friendship in this stirringly intimate reimagining of life in pre-colonial Ghana. This captivating novel establishes Ayesha Harruna Attah as one of the most distinctive voices of the contemporary literary scene.
Interesting stuff. I'm excited already. But before we dig in, how about the author herself? What can you tell us about her, Abena?
Okay, so Ayesha Harruna Attah grew up in Accra and was educated at Mount Holyoke College, Columbia University, and NYU. Her writing has appeared in the New York Times Magazine, Asymptote Magazine, and the Kane Prize Writers 2010 Anthology. Her debut novel, Hamatan Rain, by Per Ank Publishers, was nominated for the Commonwealth Writers' Prize in 2010. Her second novel, Saturday Shadows, was published in English by World Editions and Dutch by De Goes in 2015. Ayesha is a 2014 Africa Center Artist in Residency Award Laureate and Instituto Sakatar Fellow. She was awarded the 2016 Miles Morland Foundation Scholarship for Nonfiction, and she lives in Senegal.
great. Maybe one of these days we have to get Ayesha to come to Ghana.
Yes.
And then,
yes.
interesting.
She does come.
Yes, but for us.
Yes, specifically for us.
We'll bring her to Ghana.
Yes.
Let's talk then about, now that we've settled all the bits about the book, let's talk about characters. Who are your favorite characters? I'll start with you, Komi.
I'll go for Wechi.
Wurche, okay.
Is it Wechi? Or?
I think it sounds more Wurche.
Yeah, because I think she is very confident and she goes for what she wants. And I think I like that about her. She's confident. She's not that timid, shy, fearful kind of person, but she's confident and she wants to take, part of major decision taking. And I think that's something I like about her.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about you?
That's interesting because I'll go for Amina. Even though Wurche
well, those are the two main characters, so you split them among yourselves. Right.
Even though Wurche really stands out because she has a forceful personality, I loved Amina for her quiet presence. And I think even Wurche commented on that she has this stillness and calmness about her that attracted people to her. And underneath that was a courageous spirit that refused to be broken down. So I'll take Amina.
How did you find this book, briefly? How did you find it? As a reading experience, how did you find it?
It was a beautiful experience. And even the way it starts off, the very first lines, it eases you into the story very gently, and then the action starts to build up. And I loved it particularly because I haven't read any book like this, that delves into this particular history of Ghana. That doesn't start off from Ghana being, colonized, but delves deep into how people were living in Ghana at the time, particularly in the northern parts of Ghana. Right. And so that's really stood out to me.
For you? Was it same? Was the experience same?
It's something similar, and I find it very revealing because through this book I got to understand that slavery is not only what happened in America, but happened here too. Country. Internally, and I find that very, very revealing. And I like the book, the way it describes, all these happenings, very revealing to me.
In the 19th century, as a matter of fact. But let's talk about themes, style, and any other things that come to mind. What would you say in that regard?
Themes, of course, we have what I mentioned earlier, slavery, one of the dominant themes in this book. Of course, the infighting, chieftaincy, fighting, politics, of course, imperialism, because we had the British, French, and Germans fighting.
Let's leave some. But there's one that if you guys don't mention, I'm going to be cross with you. Let's see whether you get to mention
that.
Okay, I hope I get this right. But yes, feminism comes out strongly.
Okay.
There's also religion, education. There's also sexuality.
Right.
Which also comes through subtly but strongly. And then, there's friendship, there's patriarchy. This book is rich with so many themes. Motherhood, what it means to be a woman, all of these themes really come out very strongly in the story.
There's also male chauvinism and all of that. But what I was actually looking for was love. And neither of you said it, and I was surprised.
I was going to say that.
It's like our calling as human beings.
I think we took it for granted.
It goes without saying, but it had to be said. I will start off by just reading this proverb. It's a Gurma proverb. By the way, the Gurma or Gurmanche, that's an ethnic group living mainly in northeastern Ghana, Burkina Faso, around Fada and Gurma, and also in the northern areas of Togo and Benin, as well as the southwestern Niger. They number approximately 1.75 million. Actually, in Hausa, Fada Ngurma means place where one pays the tax. But I've also heard Hausa loosely in Ghana, where, I think it means gossip or something. So, Megurma is like something of the sort. I have to research on that. But there's a proverb. It says, the clan that is great in number is also great in strength. And as you read the book, you will see that, sometimes people must congregate. And that's how you see the two heroines of the book, protagonists, actually coming together. Yeah. Amina, The caravans could come at dawn. The caravans could come when the sun was highest in the sky. The caravans could come when midnight had cloaked everything in velvety blue. The only sure thing was that the Sokoto caravans would come well before the end of the dry season. But now, that had changed. For weeks, Amina and the rest of Botu were not even sure the caravans would come at all. Though rain clouds had not yet emptied, lightning lit up the sky in the distance and thunder boomed. The grass had already started to grow tall, and there was talk of horsemen getting closer. Horsemen who razed everything to the ground. Horsemen who scared off the cavalry. Horsemen who stole people. It wasn't a good sign. Amine's father needed to go to Jenne to sell his shoes. Amine's family needed to sell their food. That's how we are ushered into this book. Caravans and caravanry and selling and buying. It's like a bustling place.
Yeah.
For you, the start, not just here, but the start, the opening pages on Amina. How did it strike you? What picture did it paint for you?
I see the picture of a normal life, in those communities, happiness that you get from the caravans, the bustling, selling of things, happiness all over the place. And then there's another thing that they mentioned, a symbol of fear, trepidation, the horsemen that bring, fear, trepidation, and all that. So yeah, normal life, those days where people, even though there's happiness, there's something that's still lingering in their mind that there's possibility that maybe these bad people can come around and cause, havoc.
I'm going to just read another portion briefly, pages 9 and 10, from the penultimate paragraph of page 9 to page 10. Amina dragged the twins home. Now would be annoyed that the girls hadn't already cooked and started selling to the caravans. Amina watched the glob of shea butter liquefy into a golden yellow oil, her mind on the caravan. She had thought of the Madugu. Eya once told her that he had 20 wives and was still searching. When she had told her friends, they started conspiring to set themselves in his path. To be a 21st wife. What was admirable about that? Anyway, that's the point I wanted to make. Because another thing we see here, of course, there's the theme in itself of Islam as a religion running through, but the theme of polygamy.
Yes.
How do you feel about that? Both in the context of the book and generally as a person. How do you feel?
As a person, first, I think I find polygamy to be a good thing. That's from my own perspective, because that is a person's decision to make. If someone decides to marry more women, I don't think that should be a problem. What is important is to ensure that the parties agree. I mean, the women agree that, look, I accept that I should bring another wife in there. But for me, I think that is something that is a personal choice to make. It shouldn't be anything that will be criminalized in a way that if you do that, you have to face the law.
Right. I mean, like bigamy. If you marry in a certain way and then you have another wife,
exactly.
It's criminal.
Yeah. For me, I think it's not any bad thing. I think that if I get a chance.
I like that. If you have the chance. wait till she hears about this. She just might think.
She's watching.
She's watching now. I don't know. Of course, what's good for the goose
is good for I was just about to ask.
Then there's also the other end of polygamy. Of course, we don't see that in the book, but then there's polyandry.
Yes.
What do you think? Society is woven in such a way that men can have more wives, but if a woman did, it would be... I know there are a few women in recent times, you would see that, but what do you make of it?
Personally, I feel like one husband is enough. One husband is...
You say it as though one husband were too much work. A human.
But generally, I believe that polygamy had its purpose. When you think about the division of labor, back in the day when a lot of the manual labor, you had to share it with your family. So I understand in those times. But in modern times, I feel like times have changed. Women are also working, earning money. And so I really don't see why there would be a need for more than one wife. And I guess that also it derives from my Christian belief that, one man, one wife.
But some would even tell you that, yes, in the New Testament, Jesus would come and say, oh, and it was about your ancestors, your forefathers, and how stiff-necked they were. But in the Old Testament,
it
was there. Should I mention Solomon?
That's the first name that came to my mind.
And even David. I mean, and his concubines, with whom his own son at a point would.
Yeah.
I saw you wanted to add something to that.
And they were the apples, David, God's eye those days.
Oh, so this analogy you are drawing, I see you are quite a fan.
Oh no, I am a fan.
If we leave you, you will do so many things.
You convert others.
But let's take a look at another subject that is of interest to me, and I'm sure to you as well. Skin color and attachments. Let's go to page 11. If you could read for us, Abena, starting from the second paragraph of page 11. Na called her over.
Na called her over. Did I see that woman hit you? Amina nodded slowly. The knock had only startled her. It wasn't that painful. And as mean as Issa now was to her, she didn't want her to get into trouble. The oil was burning. Next time, don't give her a reason to touch you, said Na. Na said that because Issa Na's skin was lighter than theirs, she generally got her way. Na said a long time ago, something had poisoned people into thinking the lighter you were, the better you were. She said Issa Na looked uncooked, that in a perfect world, Amina would be considered more beautiful than Issa Na. Then Na said, but you can't eat beauty.
Anyway, that's exactly where I wanted you to. It struck me. We've had these mindsets over time that lighter means better and all of that. Part of it is the colonial stereotyping, and we've bought into it. But I don't know when I stopped when I got to this portion. How did you feel reading this?
Yeah.
Maybe we needed some light-skinned people to give us a different version of this.
But it struck me as well that colorism started as far back as then and still persists today, and I laughed at the part where she said Issa Na looked uncooked. Because,
I would also say that she would get away with some things because of her color.
Exactly. And that's the privilege that comes with being closer to whiteness, because that is the basis of colorism, how close you are to whiteness, which has been branded as being more desirable, more preferred, and it pervades throughout most of the countries that have been affected by colonialism or European imperialism, so to speak.
Now, on the next subject, I'll read this portion, and the next one you read, Kwame. But I just want to read from, where do I even start before I get to the end? Okay, so from page 16, from the top. I'm reading the whole page and just the first line or two of page 17. The man beside, and I'm talking about the turbaned man, the man beside Amina curved his index finger, encircled with a knobbed silver ring, and spooned up a globule of porridge left in the calabash. She waited for his verdict, hoping it would free her. What's your name? He said. Amina. Beautiful Queen Amina, he beamed. That did not reassure her. Did you like the porridge? She asked. He put his hand on her thigh, and the pads of his fingers settled on her the way one's feet steady themselves on new ground. On tiptoes at first, and then with all of one's weight. His thumb and forefingers pinched the cloth covering the flesh on her thighs, and then he found the opening of her wrapper, and his thumb made contact with her skin. He traced circles, and warmth grew in that area, threatening to climb up, but she willed the heat to stay under his fingers. She didn't understand why her body was enjoying what he was doing, although it didn't feel right. His fingers drew lines higher and higher up her thighs. His friends still talked, oblivious or pretending to be. She focused on her cover cloth, puckering up and down every time he moved his hand. He drew his face closer to hers. His hot breath was inches away. I'll tell you about the porridge if we can go somewhere, he whispered. His hand slithered up her thigh, and his fingers were about to touch her triangle when she leapt up. She grabbed his bowl and hurried to gather those that had been left on the ground. Hassana, Husseina, she shouted, running to them. Oh. I read this portion because there are other portions that are even more, I wouldn't want to say explicit, but it tells you about the sexuality and sexualization and objectification of women, if you like. And it's stark in this book. I'll start with you, Komi.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
And that was endemic at the time. Women were seen to be just object of sexual pleasure, and that was it. And of course, we've seen this in this part of the book, where hardworking lady trying to sell something and make a living for the family, and someone's trying to take advantage of her. And that is very, very disturbing, But I was happy when I saw that Amina was able to get out of that place. She knew that things were getting to places where they shouldn't go to, and she left. So, of course, we have a lot of these issues in the book where women were made to be just
mere objects of pleasure.
Mere object of pleasure for the men, and that's something that I do not like.
Yeah,
I frown
it was pathetic reading it from a male standpoint, which is why we also encourage people to read books like this, because it also then gets you thinking about who you are and what you've been doing. Sometimes there are things that, that's how it's done, until you realize, actually, there could be a different way. It's like this interesting scenario where I hear someone was asked, why is it that when you cook, you add onions in there? And she said, my mother taught me. And then it kept, my grandmother taught me. And then it went on and on. No one knew why they added the onions first.
Yeah.
Apparently because of the aroma and what it adds. So similar situation. But let's talk about Wurche. Who is she? So let's break down Amina and Wurche. Who are they? Let's start that way.
So I think that's another theme we didn't mention earlier, but there's a strong theme of social class and the differences in terms of how much freedom you have based on your social standing in the society at the time. And this is evident because Wurche is a royal. She's a princess of Dagbon. And Amina, on the other hand, is a commoner, which is how they refer to her. And eventually, when we get later into the story, we'll see how their paths cross. But the snippet we just read stood out to me because this could never have happened to Wurche. Amina was vulnerable in ways that Wurche wasn't. But even then, they are also united in the sense that they are both women. And even in Wurche's instance, you see that there are limits to her freedom and to her power as a royal, just because she's a woman. And so we see differences, but then we also see how they are also similar by virtue of them both being women.
Let's talk now about this interesting theme when it comes to fighting and everything. Page 24. Would you like to read for us, Komi? The last paragraph. Salaga
24. Okay.
24.
Salaga is ruined, said Ma,
I think.
Okay.
You're right.
I don't come often, but every time I do, it seems to be in worse shape than before. When I was a girl, you could drink water from the wells. Now I am sure even slaves don't want that water touching them. And that horrible woman who came at us, I hate to say it, but when we were under the Asante, that would never have happened. They were more tactical in the way they managed Salaga. Since they were forced out, we haven't built anything for ourselves. All we know is infighting.
And that point, if I just may add some other portions to this, on page 26, it is written, guns, bottles of brown alcohol, and bags of salt had been placed at Etuto's feet. Next to the white man and his entourage were 4 trussed-up sheep, a pile of yams, and 2 large elephant tusks. Your people helped us shed the cruel yoke of the Asante, Etuto was saying, and for that we are forever grateful. But Salaga has not been the same since. And when you look at pages 35 and 36, there's talk about that as well. So it was more like from the frying pan right into the fire. The Asante, yes, were doing what they did at the time, the internal slavery, but now it had become worse under the imperialist forces. And this runs through the story, the infighting. Let's talk about that. The Gonjas, the people of Dagban, and all that. What does the story reveal on that?
Yeah, a lot of infighting, between the different chiefs and lines. So they form different groups and looking for more lands to dominate, right? So they keep fighting against one another in the story, and this has led to a lot of things like the issue of Salaga, for example, a beautiful town that has become complete ruin. If we should make any form of comparison, we may say it's kind of a Gaza today, completely destroyed. The beautiful wells are not there anymore. I mean, they are there, but they can't be used any longer. Even slaves can't use them any longer. So the infighting has caused a lot of destruction. Of course, wars are never good for anybody. They are sources of destruction, of misery, suffering, and everything. So we've seen all these things in this book. They're evident of the fact that we should always seek the path of peace instead of war.
All right. Right before we take our break, let's talk about Moro. Fine boy.
Yes.
Fine boy, Moro. Tell us about, I think you are fitting. Tell us about it.
Yes, so Moro is an interesting character. And when I first read this book, I think he didn't stand out to me as much, like his significance didn't stand out to me as much as my second reading, where I saw that he is actually, it's sort of like a love triangle in the end. And he's also sort of an ambiguous character. And even he expresses himself that way, that he knows he's doing this thing, capturing people and sending them into slavery. But on the other hand, they consider him as one of the kinder slave raiders because he will allow them to ease themselves. He will make sure they are comfortable to some extent. And so when I think of Moro, I think of a character of contradictions, but also just a human character, flawed in certain ways and, also having certain positive attributes.
Reminds me of the tax collector. You remember?
Was that
in the Bible, there was Matthew, but there was also Zacchaeus.
Zacchaeus.
Yeah, and it just reminded me of that character. We're going to quick reaction, then we have to take.
One thing about Moro I've seen is that even though he was doing that, he never liked it. It's like he was forced to do it,
Exactly.
and he was thinking of stopping it along the line. So of course, the amount of contradiction, but again, you can see that human part of him that what I'm doing is not right. I got to stop sometime.
It also teaches us that there's nobody who is all bad. At least there'll be something good in there. So sometimes when you criticize, yes, but at least there'll be something good.
Yeah.
We're taking a breather. In case you just joined us, we're reviewing this beautiful book, The 100 Wells of Salaga by Ayesha Harruna Attah. If you've not read it, you can grab a copy for yourself. This is the Joy Book Club with Benjamin Akakpo. Today I'm here with Abena and Komi. We'll be right back. Welcome back on the Joy Book Club with me, Benjamin Akakpo, and The 100 Wells of Salaga by Ayesha Harruna Attah is the book we're reviewing today. But right after the break, I'll give you my word in action, and here it is for today. Today, I picked something from globule. Globule, that's a word actually used in this book. It's spelled Globule. Part of speech, it's a noun. So what is a globule? It's a small round particle of substance or a drop. Another meaning, it's a small ball of something, especially a drop of liquid. That's to be more precise. Here's an example. The disease is caused by globules of fat blocking the blood vessels. The disease is caused by globules of fat blocking the blood vessels. And here's how it is used in the book we're reviewing on page 15. It's actually 16. So the very first paragraph, the man beside Amina curved his index finger, encircled with a knobbed silver ring, and spooned up a globule of porridge left in the calabash. So a globule of porridge left in the calabash. We're still here with Komi and Abena. Excited to go further?
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
All right, so let's delve deeper into this work. Where do we go from here? Let's talk about the concept of marriage. When you read pages 47, 48, then 53, looking at how Amina was literally carted off. Where do we start? So let's start from, should we do 47 to 48? Yes. It's a bit lengthy.
Yeah.
But we can talk about what happened there, the giving into marriage and what it meant. Would you like to start?
Yeah. So in this section, we see Orche and her father. He is appealing to her, explaining why it's necessary for her to agree to an arranged marriage, because it's an alliance that will strengthen them. And actually, I found it quite funny, but I sympathize with Orche when later her father told her that he got the idea from her, because she had constantly been preaching that they needed to unite. And then she became...
So she had been the master of her own...
Yes. Her own
demise.
Yes. And so this was her father saying that she would have to get married to a prince of Dagbon, because they would be able to provide them with military strength, so that if it came to, they would be able to fight against the other groups that were trying to take the crown or the skin from her father.
It becomes even more revealing, Komi, when you look at page 58. She awaited her wedding day with dread, like a slave waiting to be sold, sure the day would come, but not knowing when it would be. And Wurcha was angry. When she asked for details, she was only told it had to be an auspicious date. She didn't like the man who had been presented to her and who had already delivered the customary 12 pieces of kola to ask for her hand. Her anger, however, was not directed at Etuto and Umma, who had planned this. It was directed at herself, at how powerless she had let herself become.
Yeah. Very, touching to see this, that she doesn't like the man. So why do you marry someone whom you don't like? Right. It means that, she was forced to enter that marriage. And as, she said, kind of a transactional marriage, that I'm giving you to them so that they can give us power, men to fight on our behalf. And the chief, her father, isn't thinking about the emotional well-being of his daughter. And she's going there, to be with a man whom she doesn't love. She's going to be like being in prison forever. And we'll get to see what's going to happen at the end of the day when we go further in this story.
And even more worrying, I don't even know whether to read, because this portion also got me, which was tradition then. She would eventually, when the ceremony, then she would be whisked away and then thrust into a room. And this man would now come and pounce on her.
Yeah.
Of course, they would shut there was a sheet on the floor to get her blood stain and everything. And everyone, it was just like an orchestration, as though she were in a play, but,
Yes, she didn't know the lines. Everybody else knew the lines but her, unfortunately. Yeah. And like you said, that part was very upsetting in its suddenness. Even when they grabbed her, she was startled. But it seemed everybody else knew what parts they had to play except her. And against her will, she had to submit. And so, you've just met this strange person for the first time. Suddenly you are married, suddenly you are in the most intimate of moments, and then suddenly that's also made public for everybody to ensure that you truly were a virgin. And I just wondered, so what if she wasn't a virgin? What would have happened then?
Yeah.
That's the question.
In addition to whatever humiliation, you'd be humiliated even further. And when you read, Wurcha tried to calm down, thinking it could be pleasurable, that what old ladies had said about pain wouldn't apply to her. With Fatima, She had learnt of the places one had to pulse to get her heart rating. The old ladies had said to her, young men know where to put their hoses, any and everywhere. Steer him, make sure you are adequately prepared to receive him. A man like Adnan will not help. He will not take his time. He will not get you to your happy place before thinking of his pleasure. So prepare, and preparation begins in your mind. The imagination is a strong tool. She tried to imagine her true love, Moro, and Fatima, but it simply didn't work.
It didn't work because, she wasn't given enough time to prepare, She was just caught, right, and sent to the room, and that happened. How can she prepare in that situation? It's not possible, right? So I think that culture is good. I like tradition, but I think tradition is supposed to be dynamic. I don't know what they still do that today. And if they do, I think that's something we need to look at. I don't think it's right to get someone without any preparation that should go and for them to check whether indeed is a virgin.
So first of all, your right to decide whom do I marry is taken off you. And then there's the added humiliation for the woman that, it is being done. It's practically in the open, though it's not technically in the open for everyone to see. But everyone knows what's going on.
Yes.
I mean, they
hear anything, they know it is this that is going on. And imagine the third layer where maybe she's not a virgin. Then it just becomes
complete shame.
Complete shame, utter shame.
Yeah.
And no one should go through that. But I have a question. Have things really changed? Because I still from time to time, I think a year or two ago, we reported some of these incidents, child marriage and all of that. But our parents are still very much, and sometimes that influence, this one, not that one. Oh, but I love this one, but not this one. And have things changed that much? Maybe you'd be in a better position to tell us.
I mean, well, my personal experience, I can't use that for everybody because my parents have always been very considerate of I and my siblings, our choices. And I feel like generally, thanks to education, enlightenment, now they know that this is the person you are going to spend your life with. You need to at least like them in some way.
But you see, you mentioned education and enlightenment, but even among the educated and enlightened, sometimes too, there's also the point that, there's a saying that what a child will sit on a tree to see, a grown person, an experienced person, while sitting, will still see that.
Yes.
So sometimes too, there's the element of they see something that you may not be seeing.
Exactly.
You like this person, all right, but is that person good for you? How do you strike the balance? That's the tricky bit.
I don't see that to be bad. I think that parents have just been trying to be protective of their daughters, that they shouldn't go and fall into any trouble. But I think the way to go about that is what we need to discuss. I think they should have a dialogue instead of imposing decisions on their daughters. It's better for them to let their daughters know the reason why they think he is not the right person for them, rather than saying, no, shouldn't go there, or should go to Mr. A or Mr. B. But we cannot rule out the fact that parents should caution their daughters on who they should marry, because it's very important, because they know more in a lot of things about, they have more experience, I should say, and they may have a lot of things to say about the person the lady wants to get married to. So we can't rule that out, but I think that how to do it is what we need to think about. It should be a dialogue, the lady should be convinced that indeed he's not the right person for me before she can make that decision.
Yeah, there needs to be balance.
We can also look at the formation of that alliance in Ketikrachi with the Germans. Would you like to tell us what exactly was happening? Because the people felt that now they were being overwhelmed. Would you like to share with us?
Yes. So it seems that, the Europeans were playing a game and the people who had, gotten out from under the thumb of the Asante were looking for an alliance that would grant them protection and not deprive them of what the Asantes had deprived them of. But then they realized that in actual fact, these people also had ulterior motives. And so, like you said earlier, it's like you've gone from the frying pan into the fire. Now trying to unravel that was a whole other kettle of fish. And so it was interesting to see how they were trying to come up with, creative ways, especially Woche. She was trying to be very, what's the word I should use? She was trying to be diplomatic, but it's not in her nature. She tends to be a go-getter, and so it was interesting to see her trying to navigate that and not offend them unnecessarily, while also making sure that her people's interests were being met.
Right. I'd like to come to you now because one recurrent theme in this work as well is illicit unions, illegal affairs, so to speak. Well, an affair, by the way, would be, but infidelity. And we see it with Moro and Woche at a point. Let's talk about that, because at a point, she does this and she even falls pregnant.
Yeah.
Then you begin to wonder, is it Moro's or is it Adnan's?
For me, I don't blame the lady in this case, because I think that it happened because of the fact that she was forced to marry the other person whom she doesn't love. And she easily, falls for, Moro, whom, she loves. And I don't blame her for that. And this happens all the time. Okay, even today, we see a lot of this happening where married men or married women, they go for other people and have that illicit, sex with them. But in this case, I think that is a bit disgraceful because Woche is someone who isn't a commoner, okay? She's a princess, and I think that she should have been a bit more cautious, in these actions. But unfortunately, I think that she was overwhelmed with emotions. Emotions, yes, and hatred for the husband, yes. And instead is it to punish the husband?
Adnan was
or
pretty
to satisfy?
rough. He was pretty rough.
Yeah. And I like that about her, because she's rough, she's wild, so to speak, right? Life has to be lived, life shouldn't be boring. But I think she went too far by sleeping with, Moro, and then the light-skinned, the white man.
Well, I'd like one of you, Komi, to go to page 103. And that portion she was made to recite, basically religion. I want you to take that part, women, a warning, to the end on the next page.
From the poem?
Yes.
Women, a warning. Leave not your homes without good reason. You may go out to get food or to seek education. In Islam, it is a religion duty to seek knowledge. Women may leave their homes freely for this. Repent and behave like respectable married women. You must obey your husband's lawful demands. You must dress modestly and be God-fearing. Do not imperil yourselves and risk hellfire. Any woman who refuses receives no benefit. The merciful Lord will give her the reward of the damned. Hair straight.
In fact, if you read another portion, I'll just get there later. So we'll see then after that the birth of Wumpany, which means God's gift. That scenario, when you read that portion, what was running through your mind?
I just thought to myself, Woche, this warning is for you. Take heed. At every point I was afraid for her. I kept wondering, will she be caught? What will happen to her? And I think that's why I decided Amina is my favorite character. Woche was giving me heart palpitations. She was a wild child, and admirable, but sometimes I felt like, she should hold herself back a bit more. But then she wouldn't be Woche, so.
And that is where later, when you read the book, then you would see where Adnan, after the discovery of everything that had happened, he literally, this religion, and then he literally refers to her as Shaitan, Satan in Islam. So I saw that correlation, from there.
Yeah.
But she's very bold. to stand in front of your husband and say that, look, I did this to you.
Exactly.
I thought she was going to shoot the husband at the time because she was holding a gun, but she was bold to say that, and then after that, bolted with Amina.
It skips my mind where that page is. I wish we could just read it briefly. It's poignant when you read that page where she gets to. Maybe we'll find it, and when we do, we'll read a little bit from there.
Where he refers to her as Shaitan.
Shaitan.
Okay.
And what happens in between. But let's talk a bit about Amina and Khadija. Any reflections on them, Komi?
Amina is a very interesting character in this book. Why? Because she suffered a lot of things. She's seen tragedies from one to the other, right? That she lost the parents in very, very heart-wrenching situations. She lost. She sees the brother die on the road when they were going to that far place.
Okay, I found it.
Got separated from the twin, sisters. I mean, she's seen a lot of things in this book and in the midst of all this, she keeps that coolness, right? That hope that things will get better. That's something I like about her, even though she's not my favorite character, but I like that about her. That look, despite the difficulties, challenges, life must be lived. Life continues.
I found it interesting, though, this bit about Adnan bringing weird stuff for her to grind for him. And then later, Wurche's mother would tell her that maybe it's for, sexual stuff. And it got me thinking about some boys and men today who do all kinds of things.
Actually, I was scared for Amina. I thought she was going to be stuck
Yes.
because of what happened. But I'm happy that the woman came to save her.
And said, "Oh, sometimes your father lets them drink this, so that they can
strong.
Fight in war." I was like, "Oh, thank goodness."
To even be more sexually active.
Yes.
It's funny, right?
The description was
the
so
way they
interesting.
described Adnan in this book, that he's a large man.
They described it as a fat cat.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And do you imagine the other figure and you ask, how will she survive?
I understand why, Wuche doesn't like him.
Anyway, so getting to that portion, she tells him what she has done, and then this is where he calls her whore, Shaitan, Adnan Bello. But she was, I think it was so, she told him in the face what she had done. I feel she had some serious guts.
Yeah.
Because in those
fearless,
times, it would have been really tricky to say something like that.
I think it's the blood of, royal regal blood inside of her that is the cause of the fact that she's that bold and to do things like that. And the opposite is the brother Dramani, who is peaceful, peace-loving person. But this lady is, she wants power, right? She loves power. She wants to be on top of issues. But I was happy that at the end of the day, she was the person who says, look, we've got to end all these wars because wars are destructive. They're killing us. So let's end it and pursue the path of peace.
Okay, so to conclude the conversation, let's talk about how the lives of Wurche and Amina merge and how they end up standing up for each other and for themselves. Over to you, Abner.
So Wurche, against her personal beliefs, ends up taking Amina as a slave, basically. And this, I believe she did out of jealousy, primarily. Because she was against the whole slave trade. So she would probably never have done that. But when she saw Amina, she was struck by how attractive she was. And when she got to know that Moro had paid for it, she said, no, I'll take this girl.
I can't take chances here.
Yeah. And their relationship, it becomes more like a sisterhood. It's
but there's a stark difference because one is a princess and the other is basically a slave.
Yes.
Yet they become like two peas in a pod.
Yes. To the point that Amina almost, she takes over the mothering role for Wumpany. He starts spending more time with her. She has more of the mothering bone. And I think Wurche accepted long ago that
Wurche is like
she's a tomboy.
Amazonian warrior.
Yes. And
right.
so, yeah.
And I think that it is Wurche who saves Amina's life, because I think that it's good for her to have bought Amina, because as you said, it's like Amina was like a sister to her, and I think that saves Amina from other forms of slavery. To be sent to a different part of the country where she'll be submitted to what happened with the Wharf. Is it Wafasapong?
Yes,
What happened there.
Yeah.
That's something that I don't pray for anybody to go through.
So how does the story end, if you want to add anything, and what lessons did you take from this book? I'll come back to you, Tommy.
So, okay.
You go first.
Yeah, so the story ends where, at the end of the day, there was war again, right? And at the end of the day, the chief committed suicide. And that's what opened, Uche's eyes that, look, we've got to end this thing, and speak the language of Dramani, who has always preached the sermon of peace. And that let's end this, let's pursue the path of peace. And think that, for me, what I've learned from this story is that wars are never good things. Okay, no matter what happens, no matter how powerful you are, you will still lose people. You will still, be a victim. You lose something, right? So it's better to pursue the path of diplomacy, peace, and get things solved diplomatically.
Right. Abna?
Okay, so with the way the book ends, it gives you, even though there's a sense of uncertainty about what the future holds, there is also a sense of hope. And what I learned from this book is that it's important for us to know our history so that we don't repeat the same mistakes. So it ties in with what Kwame said. We really need to know our history so that we don't repeat the same mistakes. We can learn from them and, move to a better and brighter future.
Of course, if you don't know about your past, then you'll have nothing for the future. Thank you so much. But before we go, we're going to wrap up. It's been an exciting review of this book. You should grab a copy at your convenience. The 100 Wells of Salaga by Ayesha Harruna Attah. Of course, we can't digest everything in it here. That's not even the plan. But we also encourage you to go out there and get copies for yourselves. But to cap off the conversation, I'm going to give you my reading quote for today, the figure of speech, and then a beautiful poem. But let's start with the reading quote. What I have for you today is this, something from Jane Austen. Remember her? I declare, after all, there is no enjoyment like reading. How much sooner one tires of anything than of a book. When I have a house of my own, I shall be miserable if I have not an excellent library. Do you even have a library to talk of an excellent library? I'll repeat. I declare, after all, there is no enjoyment like reading. How much sooner one tires of anything than of a book. When I have a house of my own, I shall be miserable if I have not an excellent library. And I can boast that I have thousands of books, in fact. So imagine where that puts me, right? So you need to grab your own books too and make the most of them. Good books, for that matter. But then the figure of speech I'm going to leave you with today is merism. Merism. And it refers to referencing something by listing its constituent parts or multiple descriptors. So instead of mentioning the thing, you mention the parts to represent it. For example, flesh, and merism is spelled M-E-R-I-S-M. When referencing the body, you say flesh and bone instead of the body. That's a merism. Or when you're trying to say you've looked everywhere and you say you've searched every nook and cranny. That is another example of a merism. Again, to refer to a holiday destination, you could simply say, oh, I'm going to enjoy sun, sea, and sand. And everyone knows you're going on a holiday. When you use those devices, you are employing merisms. And now my poem for you today as we cap off the conversation. It's titled Dented Souls, and it's from this collection, Excursion on an African Mind, a collection of poems by Amwafowa Sefa Cecilia. I'll go to page 13 and read from there. It's a short poem. And here's what it says. Innocence and purity, extended hands, role models seeking. The fresh snow, look-alike hearts that are unsuspecting. Welcome all without a thought as to the existence of bad. So what is their crime? Should they be charged for being too trusting? Should their creator be charged for giving them clean slates of trust? Grown children with dented souls, crying within, masked with adulthood, trapped by responsibilities, nosy eyes and fingers. Even the bright light reveals not their hidden little selves, beaten and bruised by monsters who roam free, leaving them tired, bitter with loathing, and making them the apparitions of their monsters. And that is Dented Souls from Excursion on an African Mind by Amoafoa Sefa Cecilia. Hopefully you've enjoyed our conversation today as we've brought you that review of Ayesha Harruna Attah's The 100 Wells of Salaga. Thank you very much.
Thank you too.
Abna Kakari, thank you very much.
Thank you.
For joining this discussion. I'm sure I look forward to the next time I can pair you guys together and review some other book together with the proponent of polygamy.
I've got a new title.
My name is Benjamin Akakpo. This has been the Joy Book Club. And here we bring books to life. Look forward to the next installment. From us to you, bye-bye.